Hello all, hope you're having a great day today. Today we are talking about human resources, and this is chapter 4. So no matter how well designed the sport facility is, without the right mix of well-managed and properly motivated employees, the sport facility is very likely to fail. The number one resource of any organization is the people. Because of this, the discipline of human resources is one of the most important business lessons a manager needs to understand. So a few of the things that we're going to be talking about today are, of course, characterizing various types of employees a facility manager may have to supervise, but also understanding the basics of hiring, promoting, and terminating employees. And I will tell you, probably the one headache out of your job that you're going to have is dealing with people. For all of those reasons. Knowing the basics of how to properly classify independent contractors for legal purposes. And also to understand some of the essentials of evaluating and training employees to maximize their contribution to the facility, as well as appreciating the legal challenges that arise from managing employees. And understanding the labor unions and how union employees affect the management of a sport facility. So here, these are the different sport facility jobs depending upon the type of facility that it is. You've got your facility manager that kind of oversees all of these things. But you have your box office and ticket sales, your security, your parking, which could be part of one, but not always. Your maintenance or your maintenance team. Your architecture and engineering kind of oversee everything in the planning processes, and also you've got your engineers who are there to help with maintenance or oversee maintenance. Your finance department, your human resources, and there's probably a few more out there as well. Your concessions could be either outsourced or could be in-house. It kind of depends, again, upon your facility. So sports facilities are a unique setting for employment with many challenges, especially as the demands for labor can fluctuate widely depending on variables such as the event schedule, the time of the year, attendance, weather, which we're having to deal with this week, and various other factors. To meet the manpower needs, most sport facilities use a variety of work types to best handle the workload. Typically, a stadium utilizes the following employee types, such as full-time employees, but you also have a mix of part-time employees, a mix of contractors and vendors where you're outsourcing your labor, as well as interns. Now, whether you pay interns or not kind of depends, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Each work type plays a crucial role in getting the labor of a stadium done in the most efficient and cost-conscious manner possible. And each work type comes with its own set of pros and cons depending upon the situation. I'll also add another type in here, and more of volunteers. They are not necessarily considered to be employees, but they do have a special place in a sports facility. So talking about internships, as I am the internship coordinator, internships have long been a part of the stadium and event business and typically involve college students or recent graduates doing mostly administrative tasks, often for college credit and the opportunity of the real world experience. Interns are generally the most economical employment type. They are typically paid minimum wage, and sometimes, if it is permissible under the law and allowed by the student's college or university, they receive no salary and only receive college internship credits. I'll tell you, it really depends upon the facility as to whether or not you get a paid internship or not. As far as this internship coordinator is concerned, if you can find one that's paid, go for it. But you got to look early. In recent years, the federal government has been looking out for the rights of interns and has made it harder for employers not to pay interns. The Fair Labor Standards Act has set up the following criteria to determine whether an intern is entitled to minimum wage. The intern and the employer understand that there is no expectation of compensation for the internship. The internship provides training that will be similar to that which would be given in an educational environment. as well as the internship is tied to the intern's formal education by either coursework or academic credit to some extent. The internship accommodates the intern's academic commitments by corresponding to the academic calendar, or the term of the internship, so the semester. The internship's duration is limited to the period in which the internship provides the intern with beneficial learning, and the work complements rather than displaces work of paid employees. So they can't displace employees. They have to, your work there as an intern is just a complement. And also gives substantial education benefits to the intern. The intern and employer understand that the internship is conducted without an implied promise of a paid job upon the conclusion of the internship. And typically, interns can add a spark of excitement and enthusiasm and new ideas to a sport facility. But because they are inexperienced, they generally require a lot of management support. They can also bring a challenge to managers as well, and they have to be aware that the internship is meant to be an educational experience and not just cheap labor. So it's not just about going and getting coffee or those types of things. So for their part, interns need to be aware of the amount of work that is expected of them for the internship to be successful. And I just encourage you that if you are looking for an internship, you want to treat it like a job, because it could end up being a job, but it could also be a referral for another job. So if we look at the different types of full-time employees, we look at exempt versus non-exempt. A full-time worker typically works one job as their primary employment, and they work over a certain number of hours per week, usually at least 40 hours, and are eligible for benefits. There are two types of full-time employees, the exempt and non-exempt. Exempt workers are salaried, are not eligible for overtime pay, and are usually either executives, professionals, or administrators. Typically, in a stadium environment, exempt employees would include the stadium manager, the facility engineer, the box office manager, and event manager. They are typically paid more than just your full-time employees, but there is some give and take. Again, you aren't paying them overtime, so you pretty much have to pay them a little bit more for that reason. Non-exempt employees are generally paid an hourly salary and are eligible for overtime pay. Examples of non-exempt employees in a stadium setting would consist mostly of non-manager roles, such as plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and certain administrative roles, or your marketing department. Marketing people might possibly be added in there as well. The difference between understanding who is an exempt or non-exempt employee is an important one. With long hours on event days and with all the off-hour emergencies that may come up, it is easy for non-exempt employees to far exceed 40 hours, which will put them into an overtime pay rate. Although overtime is often unavoidable at sport facilities, it is the sport facility manager's job to help avoid as much overtime as possible to keep from exceeding the budget. This can be done several ways, such as if a non-exempt employee works a 12-hour day because of an event. The manager can reduce the employee's shift to only 4 hours the next day instead of the normal 4-hour workday. Most key jobs, such as managers and skilled positions, are performed by full-time workers because it is important for the facility's continuity and operation to have a base group of employees who have both job expertise and leadership skills. That being said, most sport facilities are cautious in hiring full-time employees because full-time workers are the most expensive type of employees because of the benefits that they receive and continue to get a regular paycheck even when the event calendar is not necessarily full. So these are some questions. Should interns be paid? And these are things that I want you to think about with your facilities, depending upon what you're doing. What is an independent contractor? And I think you just have to, as a facility manager, you have to be resourceful. You have to consider what are the needs of the facility, and especially at the depending upon what is going on. Right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's difficult to have full-time employees at a facility when you don't have events going on. So just some things to consider. So according to recent statistics released by the U.S. Department of Labor in 2018, 10.5% of all Americans in the labor force belong to labor unions, which account for just under 15 million workers. Although the percentage of union workers' share of the labor force has dropped by half since 1983, union labor still represents a significant portion of the workforce in many regions, especially in the northeastern United States and in big cities. We don't see it as much here unless you work in the oil industry. Traditionally, the percentage of the workforce belonging to unions is lower in the southeastern United States and in other rural areas. And it is not uncommon that certain sport facilities depend heavily on union labor. Typically, the jobs that rely on union labor include job categories such as the trades, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, etc., and your food service workers and your janitorial staff. For some employees' perspective, and unions can give them better bargaining power for wages and working conditions because the union can bargain on behalf of multiple employees and have leverage with the employer that an individual would not have. You have seen some of this with the unions in relations to more of the professional, like professional basketball. You have seen some of that in the bargaining power. Management, on the other hand, usually has concerns when employees unionize because they feel it can affect the employer-employee relationship and limit their ability to manage their business and workers as they see fit. And managing a stadium or event, it is important to understand which employees, if any, are in a union because they may have certain work rules that apply specifically to those workers in that job category. So what would you include in the job analysis and description for an usher or concessionaire and a facility manager? Those are some things to think about. And a job description is a list of work responsibilities and requirements that employers use to recruit, classify, and manage employees. Typically, when a sport facility manager is looking to hire, she will develop a job description on what the employee's job responsibilities are and qualifications needed to do the work. A job analysis is often undertaken to help identify the key elements of the job, and this becomes the foundation for the job description. This description will be submitted to Human Resources, who will review the document to make sure the job description is clear and follows Human Resources best practices and labor laws before posting it for people to apply. Your labor laws do change periodically, and so they usually keep up on it better than we do as managers. That's what their job is all about. A job description is often broken into 3 parts. The first part gives a job title and summary and lets potential workers know if it is a full-time or part-time position. The second part is often the heart of the job description and describes specific job functions that the employee will have to regularly perform, such as a job analysis. The last part discusses qualifications one needs to be considered for the position. For example, do they need a high school diploma or previous experience doing this work? I would just encourage you that as in the sport management market, you're going to need experience, and you need to go out there and get it now before you even do an internship. It's going to help you in getting a better internship and better pay along the way. A savvy manager will use a job description as a management tool in several ways. As a hiring tool, as discussed earlier, managers use a job description to find employees for open positions. The better written and distributed the job descriptions are, the more likely you will have qualified candidates apply. They also use it for training during new employee orientation. A solid job description can be used as a guide to give clear training to the employees, teaching them job-specific skills as outlined in the job description. It's also used for managing employees. A manager can use a job description to hold employees accountable to their specific job functions and to help both the manager and employee focus on the core elements of the task that they need to complete. It is also used for evaluating an employee's job performance. A manager can use the job description to evaluate an employee's performance by looking at how the employee is doing completing the job responsibilities as outlined when they are hired. So here, what is a job analysis? Looking at the job design and the job description. What are you looking for and why in that hiring process? And making sure that you're using that job description as for advertising the position as a hiring tool, as well as how to screen applicants and the interview process. And I will tell you now, a lot of things are done online in the professional realm now. So you do have to apply online, and so it's good to have a resume that is an electronic file, if you will, that you can just shoot over. But also important that you have references and that you line yourself up well. So knowing that, checking out how that company does their hiring processes, asking questions, all of those things are really important. So why is employee training so critical? Proper training of employees is key to the successful operation of a sport facility, and it can be tricky given the varied job types and the diversified skill set among employees. Certain training for some jobs in a sport facility is required by either state or federal law. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, is a federal agency that holds employers accountable for providing a workplace free from serious recognized hazards, has many training rules in place that employers must follow. For example, it has several training requirements for heavy equipment operators, such as forklift drivers who move product at sport facilities, and if the sport facility uses propane to cook in the kitchens, food service workers need to be trained on the proper storage of propane. At the grocery store, to use the basket, the thing to go get the baskets, they have to have a certification. You have to have certifications for everything, it seems. It's for safety purposes. Many employee trainings can be done universally and apply to all employees. Trainings that fit this category would include the following, such as sexual harassment and diversity training. Teaching employees to properly interact with one another applies to all employees and can be taught as a group, no matter what the employee's work type or job responsibilities. And I'll also say that many of these trainings can be done online. We're required to do these trainings, the sexual harassment and diversity training, online every year. We have other trainings that we have to go through as well, and it's all done by video, and then you're quizzed online. Generic safety training. What are employees doing in the case of a bomb threat or extreme weather or active shooter? If the sport facility is to be evacuated, what are the employees' roles in getting customers out, and where do they evacuate to? How can worksite accidents be prevented? What steps are being taken if a customer or employee gets hurt while in the sport facility? It is crucial that all employees receive this type of training. This is stuff that you don't necessarily want to do online, and stuff you probably want to walk through with your employees so they know exactly what the processes are. Important that you kind of talk through those things, and oftentimes you work through and make the processes better. We used to do that at the hospital once a month, where we would have a code blue, which was where someone is having a heart attack, or code black is a bomb threat, so that we knew exactly what we needed to do, walk through it with them. Customer service training. Because sport facilities are public buildings, all employees will interact with the public. Because of this, sport facility employees have to have a minimum basic customer service skill. So they're treating guests properly, and guests receive uniform customer service no matter what employee they interact with. Some training is job specific and does not apply to all. Managers often are required to go to leadership training, while non-managers may not be required to participate in such trainings. Positions like plumber or electrician may have certain trainings and certificates that only apply to their trades. Training can be a costly investment, but one that will pay dividends if done well. Some of the benefits training provides include lower turnover, higher employee morale, better customer service, and lower workplace injuries, and sharpened job skills. And I can see all of that in all of those realms, especially if they're having to work together on a certain area where they're trying to get people out. Doing those little codes were crucial. It could be kind of team building type activities as well. The hiring process can vary depending on the job and job type, but no matter what the position the sport facility is hiring for, it is important to understand what one can legally ask a potential employee during an interview. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has many prohibitions of what can be brought up during an interview, and some examples of question topics that should not be discussed include the following, such as race or color or national origin. What should it matter as long as they can do the job? Their religion or sex or gender identity or sexual orientation, their pregnancy status, their disability, age, marital status. Those are things that you don't necessarily need to divulge if you are being the one interviewed, but they also should not ask. And so with that, oftentimes you want to be really careful in your interview on either side and making sure those are kind of taboo topics. Just stay away from them. Don't tell them how old you are and where you're at. And that's one thing they want to be careful with your portfolios or with your information that's online. You don't need to divulge how old you are. And later on it's going to change anyway, so don't even put it on there. Many of these laws are in place to prevent or minimize the chance of discrimination in the workplace. There are numerous types of discrimination that can affect any work environment, including all sport facilities. Discrimination can be intentional or unintentional. It can happen to men, women, people of all backgrounds, people of all religions, people with various physical or mental abilities, and people of all nationalities. Managers need to make sure that they and their employees follow the law by treating people the same and not rewarding some employees or punishing others based on issues such as race, religion, nationality, age, or sexual orientation. Can they do the job and do they fit in are the most important questions. During the hiring process and all other parts of the employment process, managers cannot avoid hiring someone because they are too old, have a medical condition, were born in a different country, or a certain religion. Some things a manager needs to do to include paying men and women the same salary for the same job if their experiences are the same and they have the same degrees. Treating all employees over the age of 18 the same. Providing reasonable accommodation for prospective and hired employees. So providing accommodations so that they can do the work that they're being hired to do. Create a work environment that is inclusive and not sexually charged. Being aware of what your texts and your emails say and staying away from things that you're going to get dogged on for sexual harassment. Minimize personal and political discussions that can lead to inappropriate statements. Being careful in those holiday parties to not get drunk and spew. Anyway. If it comes to the unfortunate situation where an employee needs to be terminated, a sport facility manager must make sure the decision to terminate an employee and how the manager handles the termination follow all of the proper regulations. Mm-hmm. Here are some tips on how managers should handle employee terminations and disciplines. You want to verify any accusation against the employee before acting on it. Make sure to double check your organizational policies before assuming that the employee violated them. One thing Dr. Melrose does, and even Dr. Bonnet did when he was in the chair position, was to check with both parties. If it's a student making a complaint against a professor, he will check with the student, but also from the professor and from others that might be involved in this situation to see exactly where it lies. And a lot of times that it relies upon the character of the person that's either making the complaint or the complaint is against. Make sure the discipline is consistent with some other similar disciplines. So if it's happened in the past, it's just like in your with your assignments. If you didn't turn something in, it's a 0, and you want to make sure that you are consistent with that discipline. The discipline process should be fact-based and not emotional-based. And I find this especially when I was dealing with my kids, and that you want to make sure you take emotions out of it and that you are disciplining based upon what happened. So oftentimes you got to walk around and talk about it with you want to be careful of who you talk about it with, but talk to other managers about how to handle a certain situation, and make sure that you are in the right place before you deal out the discipline. Make sure you have a witness on hand to back you up, and to make sure that everything is legal. Have a plan before speaking with the employee. So make sure that you, usually it's a thing of you got to write it up and make sure that you have all of your documentation in place. So it's not a fun process, but sometimes a necessary one. You want to always administer the discipline in person rather than by text or phone or Skype or other impersonal means. They need to hear from you, and they need to hear that you are honest and sincere about the situation. Make sure the meeting is in private. It's not overheard from other office employees. Other than the one person that you have there, give the employee a chance to ask questions or to talk. And have an open mind. If they bring up new information that may shed new light, you want to make sure you investigate that before continuing with the termination or discipline. And the key to any strong discipline program is to have a progressive disciplinary process. Such a process allows for initial warnings, whether oral or written. I usually have a 3-strike rule. The first one is it's a verbal. The second is it's written. The third one, and you're out. Missing a day or making a small error might result in a warning. In contrast, engaging in sexual harassment could lead to immediate termination. A manager needs to document why employment decisions are made and make sure that all employees are treated the same for the same violations. Effectively communicate disciplinary issues or actions and make sure no laws are being violated in the process, such as no discrimination or not punishing someone for missing work due to having jury duty. By definition, sport facility managers manage a sport facility, but in reality, they are actually managing the people who work at the sport facility. Because without the workers who operate the facility, the sport facility will not function. Human resources is always a challenge for managers, as people, just like their fingerprints, are individuals and no two people are alike. Managing multiple people can be tricky. A manager plays a key role in almost every function possible in the human resource process: recruiting, hiring, training, retaining, motivating, disciplining, terminating, and negotiating with unions. This long list of human resource responsibilities can seem daunting to a sport facility manager, especially given all the other responsibilities that come with the job. And the sport facility manager may have little formal human resource management training. Managing people is an art and an acquired skill. Not everyone is comfortable with managing others. However, a leader needs to be found in every facility to take charge and ensure the work is done, whether by employees, volunteers, interns, or independent contractors. By learning the basic principles of human resources, laws pertaining to labor issues, and basic management principles, a manager can increase their odds of success with managing employees. Among the unique aspects of human resources is that employees' laws and situations that employees may find themselves in are always evolving. Human resources will never get dull or stagnant. And here are just some discussion questions that you can ask yourself in preparing for the material. That is all we have for today, guys. I thank you for joining me and look forward to talking with you again. Have a great day.